What's up, everybody? This is the Ikesinspiration podcast, and today I have a great guest on. The person I have is Cole Farrell. Cole is an apartment investor, and he is the founder of Volcan Capital. And I'm interested to learn from him in regards to all that he does, so I'm glad to have him on. Cole, can you please do us the favor of introducing yourself to the guests and providing a brief story of who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Absolutely. Yeah. First off, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here and be a part of this. I'm going to try to make a super long story a little shorter. But the gist is I started investing when I was 18, 19. And basically, I knew the right people at the right time. And I met this guy in Easton and he had a bunch of apartments. And I was trying to figure out my way, what I wanted to do in life. I was going to school for my degree in finance. And I just didn't really know. And anyways, I met this guy and we looked at his business and his life and everything that he had going on. And I was like, that's it. That's what I want. And the basis was freedom. He had extra income and he could kind of just do whatever he wanted. And I was like, that's it. So I was like, hey man, how do I do what you're doing? Like, how do I learn? Where do I start? Asking what everybody new person should learn, right? And he was like, well, you need to start buying property and, you gotta have somebody to teach you and you need to learn about lending, all the million things. And I was like, that's great. I don't know any of that. And he's like, all right, well, come to my office every month and I'll start teaching you and it'll just be great. I was like, cool. So I went to school, did that, worked with my parents, tried to figure out again, get through school, and met this guy every month. And one day he called me and I did anything and everything for him, just randomly. No money, no pay. It was just, he would teach me and I would help him out, whether it was building trains or painting or anything. We were both into cars. So we'd be like, okay, I'll help you with your car, anything. And one day he's like, hey man, you're still in this real estate game. I'm like, yes, of course. I'm at your office every month. Yes. And he's like, great. I just bought a building. It's a 2-unit. It's yours. You got to figure out how to do it. And I was like, whoa. What do you mean? And he's like, well, I bought it. I hold the mortgage and you want to prove yourself. So you're going to take over the mortgage from me and I'll show you the ropes and then go from there. And I was like, wow. So as like an 18-year-old, I was kind of freaking out, but I was like, all right, fuck it, let's go. And so I worked with this guy, I learned it. And then to speed everything up, we had a drug dealer tenant, a crackhead that sued us, counter-sued us. Anything you could think of went wrong in this first property. Me showing up at the door, asking for rent. And then like, I got, $100. And I'm like, oh, I'll take it. It was a disaster. Anyways, I started going to meetup groups and learning, and I met the right people, and they taught me that I was doing everything wrong. And I started reading books and kind of, going through the motions. And it was at that time, Bigger Pockets was just kind of gaining traction. So I started learning through all that. And I started really upgrading my portfolio and learning from these other people. And I started buying more units and mixture of family raised capital and et cetera. And so this same guy just started selling off some of his portfolio, and I just kept buying it up, really whatever he wanted. I was like, let's do it. Let's make it work. And we kind of created those good terms. And then hit a block where we ran out of money around 13 units. And so I was like, okay, what now? And I found, it was right when COVID was hitting. I was graduating with my MBA, bartending my way through school, and everything shut down. And so I knew this guy that ran a management firm, and I was like, all right, time to go big. I'll start managing properties for other people. What could go wrong? So I met this guy that I had known from a meetup, and he was like, yeah, you don't know anything, like come work for me. So I worked for him for 2 years. I learned construction, sales, leasing, everything at a professional level, and grew up some clients. And then I learned that I hated that. So I fired all my clients, and him and I started doing flipping and wholesale together. And we kind of got a lot of interesting stories with that. But anyways, we finally got traction doing all those different pieces. And it was at that point that I had my portfolio. I had sales experience, construction experience, all the things that you need to kind of level up. And so I took that. I started my company, Volcan Capital. I started raising money. And I started a meetup, a podcast, all the things that you do. And we closed a 9-unit that first year after I hired a coach as well. Then just closed a 12-unit in January. And now we're buying 54 units. We closed in about a month.
Wow. Crazy, man. Yeah. I guess you did a good job of making a long story short, but it's, wow, man, that's great to hear. So yeah, it sounds like since you were young, you were always somehow in the real estate space, even, whether you're a property manager or you're being coached by a real estate person or you're looking to purchase real estate. I guess my first question to you, is just, your first acquisition didn't really go the way you wanted it to go. You said you had some hard times with some tenants, and you had some crackheads and people who wouldn't pay you on time. I find it interesting when people go through hardships, and instead of them like choosing like, hey, I never want to do this again, they still decide to do it. So I'm just curious, what made you want to continue to do that? Because I feel like an experience like that, especially at a young age, you kind of be like, oh man, I don't want to do this if I'm dealing with a bunch of crackheads and they're not paying you at time. I'm curious, why did you persevere through that and feel the need to continue pursuing real estate?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. The answer is all relies in really your goals, right? Like, what do you want to achieve, and what matters? And so, like, the reality is, and everybody's probably awoken to this already, that like you're gonna do something every day. Like, whether you're going to work for an employer, or you're gonna do whatever you're gonna do. Like, it's gonna be hard, and it's really not gonna be fun. And it's just, what is the choice that I want to make today, and is it going to benefit me in the long run? Is that what's going to get me where I want to go? And so I realized that, this sucks. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. But once I started getting the rhythm, and once we got those tenants out, because I didn't really have an option to a point, right? Like, I put my heels in, and I was like, I can't bail. Like, I have money on the line, not much really, but I have a little money on the line. I have a reputation uphold, and not much, but something. And something I can't bail out here. So we got through that first set of tenants, and once we put the new people in, I raised rents by 50% just because it was a good buy, and that's another story. And I started making $1,000 a month on it, and I could show up, for a couple hours to do this and that, and then I was making money. So I stuck through that piece because I had to. Then I started making money, and just that little piece, that $1,000 a month without much time, I was like, oh, if I did this 100x, that would be a good life. I can really get farther. And that was part of the journey of just seeing where I wanted to go and realizing, gonna have to do something, so might as well do the hard things now.
Yeah. So you started to see the power of cash flow and like income coming without necessarily you having to be there. And I understand that feeling. I own 2 properties myself, and even though it's not incredible cash flow, just the act of receiving money each month and you didn't really do that much work. It's a great feeling, and it definitely makes you think like, how can I replicate that? So, you started where you started as with a small unit, and then you kind of work your way up towards eventually apartment investing. One thing I'm curious to learn is where did you get the courage to start purchasing bigger units, and why did you feel the need to make the switch from smaller units? Because, and I think you said that now you're about to purchase a 54 unit, and I think that's awesome. I'm curious, where did that need or transition just come from?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with your second question first of why transition up. There's 2 reasons. So we can go into this if you'd like, but the first part of it, I guess, is the difference in value between like a smaller multi, say 0 to 4, and then commercial, in quotes, multi, 5+. Where, for those who don't know, the small multi is based off of comps and, what Joe Schmo's house down the street sold for. And commercial stuff, again, 5+ is a little hairy, but say commercial whatever is based on profit. I was going for numbers, all my degrees in finance. I like numbers. I like that game. And I like the control. And I can't stand having my efforts based on what some idiot down the street may or may not do. And not to make that sound harsh, but it's just frustrating. And I got burnt by that at one of my refinances where I had a great buy of a small portfolio. I based everything off of income, and it would have been a crazy good deal. But instead, I didn't realize that it was all based on comps. I thought it was because it was 7 units in a portfolio that it would go on income approach instead of comps. But because they weren't 7 actually, it wasn't a 7-plex. It was 4 singles.
Oh, it was all comps.
And a duplex. They were ran on comps, and it just didn't comp out, and it was really frustrating. So after that point, I had to make that decision. Do I want to, put my heels in and learn this, or do I want to go to what I know, which is the income side? And so I said, I'm done going income approach. So we still hold those, and it's good, but I was sick of that game basically. And I also realized with that cash flow comes with numbers, and the more units, the more money. If you're buying deals, right? That's the contingent with all this. But if you're buying a good deal, you make more money the more units you have. It's just part of the game. And so I realized to go bigger, faster, I had to buy bigger properties where it's difficult to scale up faster if you're buying singles, duplexes, etc. It just is. So that's the answer to the first question. Do you want me to expand on any of that, or?
No. And it made a lot of sense. And I see, I guess essentially you just want to scale and kind of move faster than you were originally.
Right. Exactly. And then as far as kind of scaling up and just decide to do that and taking that leap of faith, it goes back to like the goals. Like it's what do you want to achieve? And you're either going to do it or you're not. And so I wanted it more than I could breathe. And I wanted to build this company. I wanted to have this life. And it's just do you really want it or don't you? Because if you really want it, you will jump off the ledge. And if you don't actually want it, you won't. And it's hard to come to terms with that. But I wanted it, and I decided to risk the farm and let's go.
Cool.
So we did.
So you're on a pursuit to find your ultimate freedom, and essentially have ultimate control of your life, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
I wanted to see, like, I know the nature of real estate investing isn't 100% easy. It has its difficulties and just life. It doesn't, and so I'm kind of curious to learn about some of the setbacks that you probably went through. Well, it doesn't even have to be about real estate. It can be anything that kind of that you had to overcome and kind of built and ended up forging your character and making you a better person,
Yeah, that's a great question. There's been so many. I'm trying to just think of
take your time, man.
All right. So I guess one of it's all different chapters, I guess. One of the challenges was trying to get financing as a young person in say teen or 20s, trying to buy $500,000 asset or $1 million asset. Like, it's not easy. And so one of the challenges was, again, how bad do you want it? And you either want it bad enough where you do whatever it takes, and maybe you sacrifice some things, but you get it done. And so when I was trying to buy the 7-flex, it was not easy. We were getting denied by every single person. And when I say me, like I said, his family that was kind of going in, I ran everything, but they kind of just contributed on the side to make sure we could do it. And so it was difficult trying to get financing, and eventually met the right person who looked at it differently. I called enough people. One person said yes, and then you go from there.
Who said yes? And you referred to a lender agreed to work with you? Oh, okay.
Mortgage broker. So actually a mortgage broker I met at a meetup, and I told him what was going on, and he's like, I can figure that out. Just give me a shot. I was like, man, if she can figure this out, I'll do anything. Yeah. And so he looked at the portfolio. He's like, do this, do that. Here's how we're going to structure guarantee. We're going to play this game. Here's what you're going to do after closing. We played a game, and it was all very up to snuff, nothing wrong, but it's a game. And I needed the right person to organize that for me, and he got it done. And so it's really powerful. It's a lot about, the team you have around you. And kind of similar note is another huge issue or challenge was when I was buying that 9-unit, the people that I was around had awesome portfolios, hundreds of units, but none of them syndicated. And I didn't have the capital to go buy it myself, and I didn't have the credibility or the network to go partner with people to then do it solo with me, or small partners. Mm-hmm. So I had to syndicate, and those guys just didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't really know what I was doing, so I had to find somebody to teach me that. So I found somebody, hired them as a coach, and the first raise was brutal. Again, like, your first time doing anything is so hard, and there's so many times that I want to throw in the towel. Whether the deal was about to go sideways with financing, again, your first purchase, your first syndication, whether it was me calling everybody I've ever met in my entire life, trying to get them to invest, and all of them saying, no, thanks. And the minimum was $25K. And yeah, that's a lot of money, but in the grand scheme, it's not. And so we're trying to raise $450,000, and it's, again, in the grand scheme, not a lot of money, and I could not do it. And it was frustrating. And so eventually forced my way through. I mean, every promise I could, and got people to do the deal. And now it was a monster success, and now it's a little bit easier, but there's just so many chances of, tipping points of you either give up or you don't. And when you don't,
yeah. Dude, I love it, man. I'm thank you for sharing all your rejections and your shortcomings, man. I think I think it's important to hear because the nature of entrepreneurship, just business or life, I feel like you're gonna come through a lot of rejections, and oftentimes the stories of success get celebrated, but that doesn't interest me as much. I'm kind of curious to know how, because I feel like behind every success there's a lot of failures, but you chose to keep going. And so, you talk about raising capital, and I know you're purchasing bigger and bigger units. And so, what has that process been like? Because you're relatively young, you don't have much experience going forward for you, and you're asking people to give you a 50K, 25K plus. Like, what's that like? How did it feel internally, and overall, what was the journey of asking people like for that much money?
It's such a good question, and I haven't been asked that before, and I'm glad you did. So first, I'll tell you it's scary as hell. Anybody that isn't scary is either not wise with your money or they just got some crazy things going on. But it's scary because there's a lot of responsibility on that with other people's money, and you got to protect it like your own, if not a little more carefully. So I was straight up terrified, especially with everybody around me saying it's a bad idea. But again, I knew where I wanted to go, so I decided to do it. And I knew at the end of the day, if I raised money and it went south, I knew internally I'd do whatever I would to get it back. And a lot of people say that, it's just, will they actually? And I'm willing to do that. So that was kind of the struggle. And you just kind of live with that for a little while. You just get used to the idea, okay, I'm actually doing this. I'm raising money. Let's just see what happens. So that was just a piece. Being young was definitely tough, trying to prove track record. I would say what saved me and what made that deal go through was that I had previous deals that were successful to harp on. So yes, I didn't have a syndication at that point for, say, the 9 unit. And yes, I didn't have a bajillion units or whatever it was, but I did have that, say, 7 unit portfolio that was cash flowing really well. That was a success. It may not have gone as good as I wanted it to, but the outside view, it was awesome.
Sure.
I did a 3 unit where cash flowed like crazy and it was an awesome success. The 2 unit I bought initially, we basically doubled its value, did a refi, pulled cash out. It was like a true burr. So like these smaller deals that went really well, I was able to point to them and go, look, I did really good at this and I can prove this several times over. Why would you not trust me with something a little bit bigger that you don't have to do anything on? And look at all these references that I have. Why would you not, give me a shot? So you're trying to, I don't like to say the word convince because you're not convincing, but you're trying to sell yourself that you'll do the right thing, and you just got to do it. You got to find people that will trust you. And then as you kind of scale up, like the second building was really difficult as well. But as I started building a team and teaching them and going back to that first deal then of showing the track record and proof, your credibility starts going. And then with this deal, it's even been a little bit easier and we're raising faster just because we can point to those 2 deals now and all the other ones. And it just builds, right? And then the referrals build and the references and all that kind of good stuff. So it's challenging, but you just got to start and keep grinding and then not look back.
Yeah, man. It's, man. I love this, man. This is very inspiring for me personally. I feel like all of life is just going through rejections and how you deal with it. You see a girl, you're like, you might get rejected. How do you feel? How do you go through that? You're looking for a job, and then you're applying to hundreds of jobs. You get rejected by hundreds of people. How do you feel about that? How do you push forward? And in your case, like, okay, you're asking hundreds of people about raising capital, and it's kind of like, okay, how do I go through that? What do I need to do? And I'll be quite frank with you, man. Like right now, I'm actually in the process of trying to purchase a 20-unit apartment, but I haven't, I haven't actually started the raising capital part. But literally everything you're saying is what I'm going through right now. It's kind of like, okay, well, you only have 2 properties. You don't have a huge thing. So how do you go about, like, why should I trust you with a 20 unit? And hearing your story is very inspiring. It definitely makes me feel more confident about moving forward. The next thing I want to ask you about is you recently talked about your I saw on Instagram, like, you purchased a 12 unit in North Carolina, which I thought was awesome and great for you. Do you mind walking us through that process or the story of that and what it looked like for you?
Absolutely. So It's interesting how we found this deal, and I think it's a real case study to those that get deals and those that don't. Everybody complains about not finding deals, but if you're not finding deals, you're either not offering enough, you're not looking in the right places, or you're not pushing hard enough. And I'll back that up. So this 12 unit, again, it's a smaller building, but it just was the right thing. I was looking for anything, really, I was looking for 20 to 50, because that's what I had in my head as a capacity at that time.
Sure.
And I was on LoopNet, I was on Crexy, I was flying out to North Carolina and South Carolina, talking to every broker I could, get to.
Mm-hmm.
And I went on LoopNet one day, I saw this property, it was priced high, whatever. And then maybe 6 months later, I went on LoopNet, I saw it, and it was the same thing, but I think I talked to the agent or I sent them a message. I don't honestly remember how I started the conversation. Somehow I started the conversation. And the agent, it wasn't a broker, it was like an agent, a normal real estate agent. And he messaged me back. He's like, "Oh, we just fell out of agreement. Are you still interested?" And I was like, maybe.
Of course.
Yeah, I thought I was going bigger, but I was like, let's see what this guy says.
Sure.
And so I was like, "Well, what'd you have it under agreement for?" And he was like, 1.1. And so I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute. Okay, it was listed for 1.6. That was ridiculous." But I'm looking at the 1.1. I'm like, 12 units, 1.1. I kind of know what rents are going to be. Okay, it sounds good. So I started running through numbers and financials, and we ended up offering him 1.05. And he's like, "Done." We're like, "Okay, cool." So got the deal done, and then we started raising for it and going through due diligence. And it was like a really weird situation where I never met the seller, as you usually don't, but I worked with the agent, but neither of them really had any idea what they were doing. It was incredibly mismanaged. So like rents were around high fives, low sixes. The highest I think was 750, and they should be probably 950 without touching them. And then after we renovated them, we bumped them to 1,200. So we saw the potential, but again, back to challenges. When you buy a very mismanaged building, it's not like you can just go to the best financial places and get a loan. Like, it's difficult because it's a very poor performing property. So we ended up going through all these different lenders, again, rejection. And we got one decent quote that was even fairly acceptable. And it was bridge debt, 24-month, high rate. And it was risky. I shouldn't say risky. It was risky to us. It was nerve wracking. And the numbers made perfectly good sense, but we were nervous as hell. It was the only way to get the deal done. Otherwise, it was a no. So we did it, and we're super thankful we did. We managed our money properly. We rushed renovations, and now we're going to be a year ahead of schedule and hitting the same returns, if not better. And there's a million challenges that we're still going through with this building. Our main main water line broke in the front yard.
Oh my God.
So that was interesting.
Wow,
we took over the management, the guy, because he was the one, quote unquote, managing it. There's no company, had no keys to any of the building. We're like, "How do we get in?" He's like, "I don't know. I got no keys." The management company's got no keys. Nobody knows. They'd have the leases. It was a disaster. So anyways, it's part of the deal, but
Yeah. So I'm curious to learn, like, what's your relationship with uncertainty? The whole time I'm hearing you talk, you're like, "Man, I don't know if this is gonna work. I don't know if the finances are gonna work. I don't even know if the property's managed well. Like, I don't know. I'm curious, like, how do you deal with uncertainty?"
So uncertainty is a managed risk, right? So you can never know exactly what's going to happen, but you can make your best educated guess. But there's things that you don't need to know that you can still go into a deal with.
Sure.
For instance, like the 12 unit, I don't know if there's keys. I don't know how management's alive. I don't know how their rents are so low. But all I care about is, do we have proper leases, which we do. They're all month to month. Great. Is our purchase price making sense with our return structure? If we get it financed, is it going to cash flow? And if so, when? Like, the important things are answered. And so there's a lot of I don't knows that don't matter. And that's a lot of stuff that people harp on and quit on. But if you just know a couple key pieces of info and you know that your ability to execute, then you just go in and do it anyways. Because I knew we could bump those rents. I knew we could rush it. And I knew that even if we got this financed in a less than optimal way, we could still perform. And so just do it.
Yeah. So pretty much you stick to the numbers and you stick to your guts and act on it. All right. That's fair to say. I know you're also familiar with John Casman. I actually had John on on my podcast, and he's great now. And I speak to him from time to time, and he gives me advice on real estate deals, and and he's been a big inspiration for me. I'm curious, how has John impacted you?
In so many ways. So I met John at a Bigger Pockets conference. I just happened to sit next to him, and that's kind of where we started, and I ended up connecting with him and learning about him. And it was right at the time that I wanted to go bigger and start syndicating. And when he and I connected, I basically saw everything that he was doing, and I was just like, how can I learn what you're doing? Like, what is it going to take? And he mentioned that he had a program, et cetera. And so I started his program, and he started coaching me. We went through the one-on-one thing, and I'm not trying to, sell any of his stuff. I'm just saying it changed my life, whether it's him or another coach or whatever it is. Coaching is so absolutely necessary. And so it was within, having somebody teach me what to do that really expanded just everything for me. We closed that first deal within that first year. And so just having him in my corner as somebody to make sure I'm not crazy, to help me underwrite deals and to teach me everything, to call when one of our biggest investors for the deal that I barely could even close backs out, and I go, what do I do? What happens? All these different things that you can't even begin to plan for. Just having somebody in your corner gives you the confidence and also like a little bit the comfortability to, execute. So working with him and having him around has just been instrumental in my growth.
Yeah, man, it's great to hear that from you. I've been speaking to John too, and he's been helping me to think bigger. Before I met him, I was focusing on smaller units, and I don't think I would never not buy a smaller unit again. But he gave me the courage to even just pursue this 20 unit that I'm working on. So shout out to him. John is the GOAT for that. And, I love John, man. And so I'm glad that you're sharing your testimony, because it seems like we're both on the right place following his guidance. Another thing I wanted to learn from you, Cole, is what is a daily habit that you do that keeps you focused on what you set out to do?
Yeah, a daily habit. I'm a huge proponent of bullet journaling, which is like
cool.
Journaling there's like little dots instead of lines. I don't even know how to describe it, but anyway,
sure.
A piece of that specifically is a thing called MINS. One of my original friends taught me about this. Your MINS are your most important next steps. It's not the things that are important that need to get done. It's the things that actually advance your career or your life. And so I have 2 to 3 MINS every single day that I always have in my ritual every morning. And those 3 things or 2 things, whatever it is, get me further. And so if nothing else, I make sure to get those done. And that's what actually makes sure that my career, my life, everything is moving. Even if a million different things that are quote unquote important pop up, the big things get done.
Man, that's cool. I'm glad you mentioned journaling. It's a habit that I've recently started doing myself. I've been journaling for like 2 to 3 months, Monday through Friday. Have you ever heard of morning pages? Oh, cool, man. Awesome, man.
So many.
Man, I'm glad that I'm connected with you. It seems like a lot of people I have on my podcast are big on journaling, which is very interesting to me. I don't know. Have you ever heard of morning pages? Okay, well, morning pages is like a practice I've got from a book called The Artist Way, and essentially every morning I wake up and I just write 3 pages of stream of consciousness. And for me, it's very therapeutic, and kind of like you, it kind of helps me direct where I want to go for the day and what's important to me. And I end up like reflecting on what really went well yesterday, and then like what I need to do to move forward. So that's cool. So, you talked about bullet journaling and having like your MINS, like your like the minimum stuff you have to do. I'm just curious, like what does that look like? I know it's usually a consistent amount of small steps that usually allow you to achieve a larger goal. What are those small steps look like for you?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. So we're closing this deal that we're doing now, and it's
sure
a lot of steps, right? There's so many different things to tackle, and it's overwhelming. So I try to break that down, and every day I just go, okay, what do I need to do today to make sure I get this deal done? Because if I get this deal done, my life, career, and everything expands. My current portfolio, whatever kind of happens with that, doesn't necessarily change anything. Buying a new asset does. So yes, you have to manage everything that's going on, and that is important, but it's debatably more important to make sure you keep growing. So anyways, MINS like for today is to make sure I make my calls for the raise, make sure we keep pushing that. We have lending questions that I had to answer. Little tiny things. It's a couple emails and a couple questions to ask my lender. But if they don't get done, the deal doesn't move forward. And if the deal doesn't move forward, I don't grow. So it's little things like that where we have other things going on, whether it's leasing or portal setup, other things that need to get done, but they're not as important versus like Min's things that really do need to. So I don't know if that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of like an example.
Yeah, it gives me a slight idea, kind of just focusing on all the little daily tasks. Yeah, that makes sense. And so, yeah, I mean, yeah, and I think before you know it, it adds up. But I guess it requires a lot of patience, right? Because sometimes it feels like all those little tasks at the end feel menial. But yeah, it's good to hear your perspective on things because I'm learning from you and it's interesting to hear how like your story reflects mine, and I think it reflects the story of a lot of real estate investors. We're all just figuring it out as we go. So my next question to you, Cole, is what's the best part about being Cole, and what's the worst part about being Cole?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say the best part, the thing that I enjoy the most is I'm like really proud of our team and the flexibility that life offers right now. I'm very blessed to be a full-time investor and to be able to have the flexibility to, in theory, do what I want when I want to do it. The reality is I'm working every day, all day to make sure I keep growing, and I don't really get to do anything fun. However, that's part of the game, and I chose this. And so
Sure.
I'm so blessed to have the team around me of people that are strong. They keep pushing me. I keep pushing them, and it's really reciprocal. So I would just say really one of the best parts is just being in the growth stage and seeing things actually work. It is the most exciting and exhilarating thing that's going on. The direct flip side to that is the worst part, which is insane responsibility. It's extremely terrifying to kind of lead the team and to be accepting, funding, especially on a large scale. When you start accepting like millions of dollars, you're doing these larger deals, it just gets a little overwhelming. And so that definitely kind of weighs on you. And like I said, we did one of the deal with bridge debt, and we're finally in like a really good spot for that. But a couple months, it's scary as hell when you're not, you're losing money. And again, you go in intentionally. We have reserves, all that's well,
Sure.
But you're trying to be the best. And when you see money coming out, it's nerve-wracking. So the good comes with the bad.
Sure. And you mentioned having a team, which I think is very key in whatever projects you're trying to excel at. Currently focusing on being able to be a better leader for others and developing a team so I can get more done. Because I think they like to say there's no I in the word great, and you can only do so much by yourself. So I'm curious, what does your team look like, and how do you find yourself assembling one?
Yeah, that's another amazing question. So the team, and I feel like this is so cliche, and I was so frustrated in this my whole life, but it's just like the team really does matter.
Yeah.
And I hate saying that because I just used
it matters.
I was running solo. I'm like, oh my God, I've heard it enough, but it is important. And so I was running solo everything because I just couldn't find the right people. You really need to vibe with the people that you're around. You need to trust them. You need to respect them. There needs to be a lot of things going on. And overall, you need to have that gut feeling that they should be with you. It's just,
Sure.
And you know or you don't. And so I met my first partner, Nate, through LinkedIn. We just connected through Casmit and mutual circles, and we just hit it off. It was a good vibe. We were basically friends before we became partners, and it was very brief, but it just worked. And then he was just so motivated, so aggressive. I was like, man, I love your energy. I was like, I'm energetic, but you are on another level. Like we can do awesome things together. And so him and I just started tackling things together and didn't really have a concrete plan on where we were going. We just knew that if there's two of us, we could go farther. And so he ended up finding somebody else that was in construction. The three of us hit it off and connected. And when that was about the same time we found Cherry, our 12 unit. And so the guy that did construction decided to work with us and do construction. And Nate and I managed the deal, and everything was peachy. And then we ended up meeting somebody else, Michelle, who was just a rock star at property management. Again, fit the vibe. Everything meshed well. And now she's on with us. So now it's Nate and I are kind of spearheading, running the deals and making sure they're consistently going. Joelle's running construction and is excellent at that. And Michelle's running property management and is the best at what she does. And so we kind of just slowly built this team that is really good at what we do. And we're super excited. Again, it goes back to we vibe well, we mesh well, but we also went through tons of people and conversations. Didn't? A lot of people leave that out.
That's cool, man. I'm curious. Yes.
I'd just like to be a testament kind of to that point of like, a lot of people just highlight the success and they don't talk about like the work.
Yeah.
And I like that you pointed that out initially. And that's kind of why I keep harping on that is what it takes. And there's a lot of times of you just going like, am I doing the right thing? Am I insane? Is this even going to work? Like,
yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's why if you notice, I try to ask more questions and ask about that. Because to me, if you can just get through the failures, like you're bound to be successful. But I feel like everyone just keeps talking about the success. Like, I feel like that's kind of more what I'm interested in. You just keep trucking through the failures, like, and that doesn't bother you, like you're bound to be successful. So my next question was actually about to be on a quote unquote failure, but that's your own perspective. But I was going to ask you, have you ever had a deal that didn't work out? Because you talk about having a team, and I know once you have a team, there's people depending on you, and now you have everything that needs to work out. And so that puts a greater pressure on you to succeed. Have you ever actually failed trying to pursue a deal, and what did that feel like?
Yeah, two instances. One was a little bit earlier on when I was trying to kind of build up. There was a 6-unit that I wanted to buy, and it seemed really good. I was jaded by the hunger, though. I was too hungry, you could say, and I kind of ignored some red flags. And anyways, I found somebody that wanted to partner on the deal because I didn't have the money, and it was just the two of us.
Sure.
We worked out an agreement where I'd basically run the entire deal, he would fund it, and we had a split. And it was very catered towards him, which was one of the red flags, but it made sense for me at the time, or so I thought. Because again, I was more focused on unit count, numbers, not cash flow. Critical mistake. But anyways, we hustled. We got it done. We bought it. And I left closing, and it was the most weird experience where usually you're so fired up at closing. You're so proud. Yeah. I remember driving home just going like, man, holy shit, something's off. Like, I don't know. And it's funny because my girlfriend at the time, or maybe she's my fiance, I don't know, whatever we were at the time, we went to the beach that weekend and just kind of like relaxed and celebrated. And I was like losing my mind. Something was on. I just was like, man, I don't think I can handle this. I think I made a mistake. Blah, blah, blah. Anyways, went home. I talked to him. I thought through this extensively. And I realized I shouldn't have gotten into this deal. And it was a great deal, but not for me because I was trying to go bigger, faster. And this would have held me back is a long story. So I talked to him. I said, hey, man, like, I'm sorry to do this, but, I gotta bounce. It's all yours. Here's all the people you need. And thanks. And so I separated from that. And thankful I did. And again, more story.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah. No, that's interesting. I'm just curious. Like, so you're listening to your gut and your intuition is telling you, something's not right here. What made you feel like that? Because like you said, like most of the time when someone's buying a property, it's like, yeah, let's go. Although not every deal is good, but I'm just curious, was it something specifically? Was it the partnership? Was it how it was being managed? Was it maybe not a cash? I'm just curious, what made you feel like that?
Yeah, I think I was jaded by like the size of the building at the time and kind of like it was right on the corner of where a lot of my other buildings were. So everything seemed to make sense. But I just kept getting this feeling that it wasn't worth it. And it was kind of like a gut pull of like, something's not right. This isn't worth it. It's not worth the time. And I kept ignoring it. And when I finally dug into, okay, why am I keep feeling like this, especially after we bought it? And I, really dove in. I realized, it wasn't worth it. Like, yeah, I could make some money, but it wasn't worth the cost, the time, and all the effort. It wasn't really where I wanted to go. Like, I thought that's where I wanted to go, and I didn't. So.
Sure. So in hindsight, I'm just curious, do you feel like your intuition proved you right, or there was really no way of telling?
Every single time. It's always
right.
It did. Always right. Yeah. Thankful I didn't do that. It would have held me back majorly.
Yeah, man. Interesting, man. I find myself to be a pretty intuitive person, and I would like to kind of actually dive a little bit deeper into that because I tend to trust my intuition a lot, but I don't understand. Sometimes your intuition isn't rooted in facts. It's just like a feeling. And I'm kind of curious, when do you know to follow that intuition versus to just follow like logic? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, I don't know. Do you ever, is it just me? I get that a lot.
It's so funny because I was just having this conversation with one of my my coaching students. And so he asked literally the same question. And we had this whole conversation. And what I boil it down to, and I'm sure it's slightly different for everybody, But what I boil it down to is when you have this feeling, but you can't explain why, is when you need to dig into it further and you know it's a problem. Because if I have a bad feeling, but I know what the reason is, well, it's the reason then. It's part of the situation and it's probably explained away. It could just be fear. It could be whatever. But like, there's a reason. For instance, like, let's say we're buying this 12 unit, we need to go bridge debt, and I get like, a bad feeling.
Yeah. Man, that's interesting, man. Yeah, it sounds like you have really good intuition. And my intuition has served me right multiple times. But it's such a weird thing, man. I don't sometimes I don't understand why it does that. And I constantly, like, for me, learn that if I go against my intuition, like 9 times out of 10, like I end up regretting it. Yeah, man, it's interesting. I remember I had a story. This was actually my first real estate deal. And I purchased it in like Drexel Hill, and I got an FHA loan to purchase it. And I forgot the exact details, but there was this real estate. There was an agent who was helping me at the time, and I didn't know what I was doing, but he kept telling me like, "Oh man, like you need to purchase this, like you need to make this purchase for like a fence, because the FHA was regulating that for the time. They have all these type of lending requirements."
Yeah.
And I ended up purchasing it. And so and that was required because it was part of the government rule. But then I don't know, I forgot what it was, but he said like you have to repair it or something. I don't know why, but he kept telling me to make these additions, and I'm like, no man, I don't think that's necessary. I think we already did what they told us to do. That, like, let's just leave it. And he's like, no man, if you don't do it, like the seller won't do it. It just was like, I don't know the details, but I just remember like listening to him, and then later on, like it was pretty much ended up being another costly thing, because at the end of the day, like it pretty much went against like the deal, and it pretty much prolonged the deal. So I don't know. I know it's like it wasn't I don't know. It's kind of weird. I didn't trust him, but I ended up doing it, and it backfired. And it's just interesting to hear like how your intuition guides you. But it's one thing. I'm curious. It's one thing when you're dealing with your own intuition, but then once you start to have other people involved, I'm curious, how do you go about explaining that? You know what I'm saying? Because it's not really rooted in facts, and you have your partner now. Like, it's kind of one thing if you're using your intuition to guide yourself, but maybe once you start to have like, maybe a romantic partner, or like, or just a friend or whatever, like, how do you explain your intuition?
So you kind of can't. It depends what it is. Like I said, I think one of the first parts is having that conversation. Okay, where's the intuition rooted at? Is it actual intuition, or is it, rooted in emotion?
Yeah.
That's step one. But 2, it's really about trust. Like, for example, my wife now, like, if one of us says we have a bad feeling and we don't want to do it, I trust her. She trusts me. We walk. It's mutual. It's okay. If you say that it's not going to work, I know that you have a good gut feeling. Let's walk. If I don't understand it, so be it. And same thing with our team. If our team has a major concern and they just cannot move past that feeling and they know it's a red flag, all right, well, let's listen. And we choose the team every time. I'd rather not do a deal and have the team comfortable and happy and everything be okay than, force the team into something when they said we probably shouldn't have, and then it blows up in our face.
Sure. And in the long run, it probably pays off, because you still get your excellent team. And even though you may not get the deal or the results that you want, you still have a long-term relationship. If anything, it probably strengthens your bond because you show trust, right?
It does. And they're probably right is really the thing, right? Like, if they have that intuition and you trust them, so you're close with them, they trust you, you trust them, just like your significant other. If they're in a bad feeling, they're probably onto something. And maybe you just didn't tap into it yet, but you should probably be listening. And that's just it. It may be saving your career by listening to them.
Yeah, man. Yeah, no, I'm glad I got to speak to you about intuition, because it's something I don't bring it off. I should bring it more often in podcasts, but it's kind of interesting to me, because I feel like a lot of people's success is attributed to intuition, but It doesn't get often spoken about because sometimes you can't. It's like something you gotta use your intuition when you're talking to people. Hey, is this person right for my podcast? Is this person right for my business? It's like there's so many times, and there's no numbers to be like, 500,000 cash flow. He's a great person, or like, you're just kind of have to trust your intuition. And I guess I'm curious how people hone that and listen to that. So, Cole, you talked about real estate, and you seem like you're dedicated all of your time to real estate, and you're experiencing success while pushing through failures. What is your ultimate goal with this? Why did you decide to go through this full time, and what do you hope to experience or achieve as a result of doing this?
I love answering this question. So I've always wanted to build a company. I've always wanted a team. I've always wanted employees. A lot of people say I'm insane. They're like, that's ass backwards. Like, why would you want that? And I just do. I just love the people aspect. I love like building that environment. So I've always wanted to build something significant. And in my head, the way to get there is to build the large portfolio that can support a staff and a team, all that kind of good stuff. So I'm shooting for $1 billion. I want $1 billion under management. Wow. And that's like the end goal. It's probably not going to happen, No,
don't say that, man. Don't say it's probably not going to happen.
It might happen sooner than I think, but it's the end goal. So my short goal is I just turned 27, so I want to have 1,000 units by 30, and then it's just the road to $1 billion after that. So
wow,
that's the track.
That's a big goal, man.
It's ridiculous. It's kind of scary, but we're going to try it.
Dude, and at the end of the day, if you try it and if you don't reach your goal, like at least like you've gotten something out of it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's interesting, man. I didn't know. I thought you were a little older. I thought you were in your young 30s, but you're 27. Cool. Yeah, man, that's a lofty goal, man. And I wish you best of luck with that, man. I was not expecting to hear such a big goal. Why is owning a company so important to you? You said you always wanted to have like a team. What is it about having a team and employees like that feels exciting for you?
It kind of goes to the intuition conversation. I can't explain it all away. I just like it. It's just part of like my core. I just, some people like want to like watch sitcoms and they want to like, I don't know, just hang out and do whatever. Like I want to sit in my office and I want to talk to my employees and my staff and like just do business. I don't know. I just enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I'm a small time, right? Like I'm not huge right now. And so everyone says that might change, but I don't think it will. I think it's just going to increase. So
yeah,
I just do. I don't know.
Yeah, no. It's just who you are. Like I guess nothing more to it. Like I guess that's what brings you joy and excitement. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, Cole, it was a pleasure speaking with you. Hearing your story inspires me to, pursue apartment investing and do my best with it. And I'm glad I got to meet you. If people would like to learn more about your story or even connect with you or maybe partner or just work with you or however, how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, great question. The best way is honestly probably email. I would say email me if possible. It's Cole, COLE, at volcancapital.com, VOLCAN. Mm-hmm. That's probably the easiest and fastest way. It'll go right to me or one of my assistants will grab it, but that would be awesome. And so thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast, and I'm glad I got to meet you as well. We'll definitely have to take this off camera and talk some more.
Yeah, for sure. We'll lock in after this. Yeah.